Hello, my name is Thomas Hirschmann, and I'm teaching data science with Pearson College London in association with IBS Americas. This course is part of a masterclass course, and you can find all the information in the description of this video. So please check this out to learn more about all the masterclasses that IBS is offering together with Pearson College. Today, I'm gonna give you a short overview of what data science can deliver, practically speaking. For this reason, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply data science capabilities onto a practical real-world setting, a real-world challenge. And the challenge being, imaginary speaking, to provide or to create a complete data science provisioning for Pearson College London. So imagine that Pearson College London itself would like to appreciate, use, and develop all that data science has to give and has to offer for their very own courses, applications, their learning, the insights that they want from delivering all the courses that they do. So that was the brief, or that is the brief, imaginary speaking, and now we're going to see how we're going to solve it. Right. First of all, what we need to understand what data science actually is. Now, if you look at a fuzzy term like data science, which is used in very different contexts in a lot of different ways, then the three things that are always the same is it always has to do with data analytics. Then there is the technology part. But most importantly is what you're going to do with these two things, how you apply it onto an actual business setting. I'm saying business setting, but meaning with business any catch-all interpretation of use cases of data analytics and technology where you can find practical value. Now, looking at this a bit closer, how are we going to apply it onto this real-world setting where we use Pearson College London as the use case? Now, if we delve a little bit deeper into understanding how we actually apply and use data science, we first need to break it down into its elements. Now, if you say you're using something that is called data science, well, there is science in this term. That means we should apply some sort of a scientific method. Now, you might have heard in your previous education about the scientific method, what that is and what it isn't. Well, first of all, it has to do with working hypothesis-based, right? So you don't just do something because you have a gut feeling about it, but you're working data-driven, or you develop a hypothesis that you then test, or vice versa, you falsify some of the hypotheses that already exist, and then by that way you learn and improve your general understanding of a topic. There's obviously much more to be said about the scientific method, but for our purposes, that's enough for the moment. Now, we combine that with computing technology. So we're not just applying this scientific method in the way that all the other scientists are using it out there, for example, by doing paper-pencil surveys or using qualitative data, but we're actually using a lot of data, and for that reason, we're using computing technology. Now, luckily for us, that has improved a lot over the last couple of years. So imagine, for example, Moore's law. Computing technology has become cheaper and cheaper, meaning the microprocessors that are now available are so powerful that you can swiftly go through a heap of data and analyze that in microseconds. Now, even if you have terabytes of data and you're using machine learning approaches, that is by now is possible. Although this computing power normally lies within the cloud, but I'm going to tell you more about that in a second. Now, combining these two, what you're going to use it for? Well, you use it to analyze complex data sets. When is a data set complex enough to warrant this scientific method in combination with large computing technology? Well, when the data set is so large or so complex that you normally struggle to do it manually, right? If you sit there and you imagine going hours and hours and hours over the data to understand what it means and what kind of insights is there, well, that's normally the time when you use advanced computing technology. Now, What are you using it for? Here comes the interesting part, right? There's still human intelligence involved or needed, and that human intelligence comes into play when we're talking about meaningful patterns and insights from that data. Well, where is that meaningful data, or how do you get to it? How do you find it? Well, you have to have some kind of framework in your head, so that will guide your analysis in the right direction, okay? And if you have done that right, then the last step is you hopefully get to some impactful results. Impactful, what does that mean? Well, it helps your business become more efficient, more effective, save costs, be more profitable, whatever it is, right? Now, I've gone very quickly over this process or this kind of more detailed explanation of what data science is, but there's obviously much more to be said. Well, first of all, you have seen on the right-hand side here, there's a lot of different skill sets involved at all of these different steps, right? So, for example, computing technology and scientific method, that has a lot to do with, you have analytical skills, but you also know about cloud computing. Maybe you already know have some developing skills. Then for the complex data sets, you need to have data cleaning skills, framework creation skills. Then moving on, you want to have the right interpretation of the data, be able to do maybe data visualization in the right way. And at the last step, you want to create prescriptive business models or prescriptive models that help your business to understand and take the right decisions from the data. Now, one key element that's missing in this overview is how do you get to the right hypothesis or the right questions. And that is something that I haven't mentioned, that is also very important in the scientific method in general, because there's obviously a lot of scientific questions that already exist and need testing, but to actually move the needle or to move the whole field forward, you need to ask the right questions. And asking the right questions, you can only do that if you have a basic understanding of where an area of expertise or your business with their knowledge actually is, and where they would derive the most value from when they move in this direction. So there is something else, let's call it experience, or some sort of experience-based creativity that you need to be very effective when you become a data scientist. Right, let's move on. Now, for our purposes, we wanted to know, now how are we going to apply this process onto a real-world case, in this instance, the Pearson College London's data science provisioning, if we wanted to build that up. Now, asking this question, you can further break it down into two areas. You can look into the internal side of a data science provisioning, but you can also look into the external side. So the internal side can be further broken down into applying it to existing students and staff, and the external side obviously to prospective students and external partners or a larger data science community. Now, let's have a deeper look into both sides and see where data science could become useful. Now, first, let's have a look at the general opportunities and challenges in this area. Right. Now, as I said, we can look into opportunities when it comes to expanding into new and thriving educational areas, or into improving commercial performance. The challenges are here that there is a lot of external obstacles involved in the development and establishing of new types of teaching principles. And there is internal obstacles involving the introduction of a fully data-driven culture. Now, let's go into the opportunities first. Opportunity area one, I would see as expanding into new and thriving educational areas. Now, what do I mean by that? So in order to really make full use of data science, you have to have some sort of a roadmap. Where do you want to go to? What you want to develop? Data science is such a broad field that you can't do everything and anything. You need to have an understanding of the direction of travel that your organization will take in that regard. Now, if you even start a broad Google search about data science, Google will bring you up a lot of associations with data science, whether it's data-driven decision-making, data-driven marketing, data-driven business models. So you need to understand, you need to decide at what level you want to apply data science as a methodology or as a thinking or as a general kind of idea of improving your business, right? Now, doing that, you should obviously involve both students and staff in order to learn where are the biggest shortcomings, but also the biggest opportunities. Now we're talking about opportunity areas. Maybe you want to understand which courses that you're already delivering perform the best and why. Where's the demand the highest, or where are the gaps in the market? If you would obviously look into the existing courses and match that with data from prospective students as to what they're seeking for or what other universities would provide. Here is a concrete question that could be solved with data science. Now, opportunity area two for me is about partnering with the right people. As I mentioned before, data science is such a broad topic that no one alone can cover it all. So you're going to be smart if you develop strategic partnerships. Now, choosing the right partners is key here, because obviously they will decide at what level of understanding, but obviously also at what level of insight you're operating or you're capable of operating. Now, you need to find your right level of operations here, because obviously there are some partners, for example, if you look at potential partners like Google DeepMind, they have already a long-standing tradition and deep experience about applying a lot of data science at a very granular level. Now, in order to play with them, you need to match that experience, so you need to have something that they might find useful in order to get to such a partnership. Now, the same applies obviously for all of the potential partners that I have outlined here to various different degrees. So what you first want to do is you want to find your matching levels. You want to find the partners that are right for you, where there's mutual interest, but also where the level of working together is best. And there's a mutual value to be generated. Now, for that to be successful, you first need to obviously know what you want to get out of that partnership, and you want to anticipate what your partners want to get out of their end of the partnership. And where there's an overlap, there's an opportunity, obviously. Moving on, my third opportunity area that I've identified here is a new way of teaching, okay? If you want to teach prospective students data science, you need to have some way of teaching that is not just theoretical. Why is that the case? Data science involves practically applied skills or skill sets that are unable to be learned completely just on a theoretical basis. And I will try to implement that obviously in my hands-on data science course in London. So when you are coming to London and we're going to meet, and you are going to see how that works, because it will only work if you apply yourself, if you test and learn, if you learn by doing and learn by trying out. Obviously, not everything is just trying out. There's a lot of existing knowledge that you can take and incorporate into your way of working. But there's also the need of having some basis, right? That's, for example, why I cited here a book called Anti-Patterns that will show you that there is not a complete right or wrong, but there are ways of making mistakes in how to apply data science. For example, if you have metaphorically speaking, if you have a round problem, you don't want to apply a square solution, right? And if you are long enough in the field, you have made that mistake in one or the other way. You have learned that not every technical solution is equally suited to deliver a solution, right? Not every technology can deliver the same solution in the same efficient manner. So there's a lot to be said about the various different ways that you should be teaching or you should be learning. I have called this Code Academy because it applies to the technical side of data science and how to learn data science. It's not just about knowing how theoretically things work, but knowing how to actually do it and being able to quickly learn new skills, right? So it's a way of spotting problems, knowing what potential solutions are out there, quickly finding the resources that you need, and then implementing them, but also being able to establish a abstract framework-driven way of solving a problem. So knowing at what level you need to step in and create code or use an existing tool or whatever you choose to do in order to solve the problem at hand. Now let's move on. I also said earlier that there is a lot to be said about the potential to use data science on an internal basis for Pearson. So one way to do that would be to create something like an insights lab. Now what would that mean, for example? So this could be a behavioral research institute within Pearson College that would look into how students are doing, what are markers of success, what does academic success even look like, how would you even collect data that would allow you to judge and assess later on whether certain students were successful or not, and how can you integrate that into a framework that makes you as an institution, as an organization better, that makes you able to learn. Now, in the same way that I would expect that my students in a data science course are able to learn, that there is a feedback loop that shows them, have I done the right thing? Have I learned something? Have I gotten better at something? Have I attained a skill? The same applies to the whole organization of Pearson. Now, Pearson needs to understand what is effective teaching? How does effective teaching look like? What do I want to convey to my students so that they are not just happy, but successful in their further careers? Now, such an insights lab is obviously complicated to create because, first of all, you need to understand the metrics, you need to understand the business that you're in, what does learning even mean, what do you want your students to have as skill sets when they come out of their courses, and how would you define long-term success, right? So there's a lot to be said about this, but there's also a lot to be learned. Now, if we go back to our overview that we have looked at earlier, the data science model, the step-by-step model, so collecting the right data and constructing the right metrics, would that be a key element in this whole process? Now let's move on. A next opportunity that I have spotted here is creating something like a mentorship program, right? Now, there's one thing that you can go on and try to teach the skills in an actual kind of face-to-face teaching setting and allow people to get better at that. But as you know, like if you want to be long-term, become a good data scientist, you need to have some guidance, some orientation. Now, obviously, I'm here to help all the students that I'm teaching, but it's good to have some sort of a mentorship program set up that will allow all the students that go through that course to have a long-term partner, a long-term mentor that will help them move into the right direction, because these mentors might have a lot of experience, a lot of practical knowledge about what kind of tricky situations you have to navigate as a data science and how to get better long term, maybe even career tips and so on. Now, there's lots of different areas where you could find these people that could become mentors. There's obviously established data scientists out there in the field. The question would then be, obviously, how would you motivate them to work with you? And that's an entirely different type of story, but luckily enough, I've worked in various different community settings where I know how that kind of community management can lead to a vibrant and lively community that's helping itself, or where people help each other. Now, we have looked into these new areas that could be developed. Let's have a brief look into the commercial aspect. For that purpose, if we wanted to apply data science as a way of thinking onto the organization of Pearson, then the most important thing is to create the right culture. Now, imagine that you have a lot of employees, you have a lot of staff that have never had to do with data themselves. They might even be a bit afraid of data, right? Like how to manipulate data, calculate with data. Now we have to take this fear away, and we need to educate them how to make data a constant part of their activities, of their daily activities. Now this data-driven culture won't emerge just right away. It needs constant reminding, and it needs constant application, practical application. So that's what I'm suggesting here that we should be doing to give people an understanding of how helpful data can be. Now the second opportunity area here from a commercial point of view is creating the right KPIs. If your organization should thrive from a commercial point of view, you want to know what's your North Star. Where do you want to develop to, right? Do you want to increase your revenue, your profitability? Do you want to just grow as an organization? What is it that you're after? If you don't have a proper KPI framework that is coherent, none of that will make sense. You will divert your energies into so many directions that you don't know what you want to do. So this is why we need a KPI framework. Once we have this KPI framework, now there is the computing technology, a lot of smart algorithms, methodologies like machine learning that you can apply that will help you improve and get better. And that's why I would suggest in this instance to develop something like an insights platform, a self-learning insights platform that will help you move the needle into the right direction. Once you have set up your KPI framework, once you know which metrics you want to follow, this will show you how to do that. Now, last point is an engine that you can build that will guide you onto how to improve your performance. That means it will spot opportunities and will show you exactly what to do when it comes to improving your commercial numbers, your commercial performance. Let's say you're looking into improving growth, then this engine might tell you which new courses you should offer to generate the maximum demand from prospective new students. An interesting opportunity that data science can solve. Even when it comes to innovation, data science can help. So a lot of existing tech companies, for example, are using big data to spot opportunity areas when it comes to patenting new technologies. So it's basically using deep learning to understand which are the connectors to the white areas in the already patented area and the patented landscape where they should probably look at and find new technologies that can be patented. So the same applies here. There is also obviously an innovation center that can be created based on data, that is data-driven, that's maybe also fueled by insights from prospective students. What do they want? What kind of format of teaching do they want? Do they want online or offline teaching or hybrid teaching? Are they missing anything? Is there any practicalities that they need to develop more skills? Like how can they get better that will still be part of some kind of innovation, right? So there's a lot to be learned from data here as well. Now, let's have a quick look at the challenges to close up. Well, first of all, we talked about identifying the right partners for such a partnerships on data science where it's about open knowledge sharing networks. So how do you even start with that? That's not an easy task. You need to know which organizations might be right for you and how to address them. So that alone can take some time. Now let's look at the challenges of setting up a code academy, a new way of teaching and educating your students, right? Again, this will need a lot of breaking down of how to develop these new ways of learning, how to have this hands-on approach, also how to help students make mistakes in a controlled way, in a controlled area where they're not afraid to try something out, to fail until they get it right? So it's not just the theoretical level, it's the practical application that we need to establish and that we create like a virtual or digital environment for. Next, the mentoring program. I already talked about that. Today, or after the COVID experience, the pandemic, everyone's attention span has shrunk. So we're now talking about people having less and less time, although everyone's working more efficiently because they're working more in a remote manner, more digitally. So at first glance, that sounds like a paradoxical situation, but if you think about it, it's a logical conclusion, right? Everyone's managing their time more efficiently, so now you have to offer something more in order to entice someone, for example, to become a mentor in a data science program. What that exactly is, again, it's a big challenge, but it's to be solved because it's not necessarily just monetary rewards that people are looking after. Last but not least, building a data science or a data culture is a very, very difficult task in itself. So for that, you have to live and breathe data as an organization. You have to come up with new ways of applying it in your organization. You have to test things. You have to give people the chance to play around with tools. Again, not easy because people have less and less time. So you need to create time or have free time for these things to happen. And the last thing, from a commercial point of view, there will be people, for example, in accounting, bookkeeping, but also in the finance department, that have a good grasp of numbers, but will they be able to give you the direction that you need in order to set up a full KPI framework? Again, to be tested, to be discussed. That is something that needs to be broken down into a practical way to see whether you're able to set up such a framework that will then be able to be implemented in a practical data science manner. Now, there's obviously much more we can talk about. For example, how to crunch numbers so that you can derive meaningful insights. But I think we discussed most of that, most of what's relevant, and I want to close at this point just giving you the practical tip that you please going to go into the description of this video to find out how to get the certificate for this masterclass. And I'm obviously very much looking forward to meeting you face-to-face in London to teach you a lot more about data science and get to know you personally.